Hey everyone, and welcome to this podcast. We're going to be talking about Red Dead Redemption. I'm joined by a special guest, which is Mr. Dan Howard.
Hello again.
So thank you very much, Dan, for joining me on this episode. An absolute pleasure to have you back, mate. This one, just as a disclaimer, myself and Dan have only played the first 2 chapters of Red Dead, and due to the fact that we're probably not going to see each other for probably another year or so,
A long time.
we thought we'd do it just to talk about this. Keep it down back there. Sorry, my brother has to sit in silence while we're recording this one.
They've got your laptop in the basement.
Easy, Harry Potter. So we're just going to be chatting about the first 2 chapters solely because that's all we had time to play for, and just chatting about our thoughts, what we think they've done well with it, and how it's going on from there. So let's get on with it, Daniel.
Yeah, I think first off, it's a massive accomplishment. I think it is a great game. It really is, and the reception has been huge. I've not gone into online yet, but I am looking forward to that. But I find it's very cinematic.
Yeah.
If you were going to sum it up in one word.
I think it's like you're saying, it's trying to capture that feel of what an old Western
Yeah, definitely.
is.
From everything from the camera angles to the kind of characters they use, and then the score as well, it's very reminiscent of like Ennio Morricone's classic Western scores. Mm. It's very much tapping into that kind of era.
I agree. I mean, one of the things I heard about was apparently they had to redo some of the cinematics again because they then later on in production, I believe, and I could be wrong with this, but they added in the black bars.
Yeah, the letterbox kind of format.
Yeah, for it. So, and as you're saying, like you can also choose to put those in
with the cinematic camera.
Yeah, with it. So I think we'll first kick off with the story because, as I said, we're still very early on. But like, how are you finding that? As you said, it's very reminiscent of Western films. Like, how are you finding that with what you've played so far?
Well, what I've played so far, it's very character driven, which I love because I think characters are often the strongest part of story. I think if you have a great story but terrible characters, you're never going to be invested because you don't care about the stakes, and you don't care about anything. Whereas if you've got good relatable people, it makes it a whole lot of difference. So right from the off, you're introduced to your character Arthur, and he's a very relatable outlaw. Like he's probably on the more honourable side. But obviously still got a past of doing the bad things that those characters are known for. What was I saying?
You were saying about characters make stories, and that he's probably one of the more honourable characters.
Yeah, so obviously you've got your main character, but then you've also got this whole sort of ensemble. You kind of go around with a whole crew of people, don't you? And each one of them brings their own kind of personality and experience to the table. And obviously from a game perspective, this is a great way for Rockstar to give you different mission types. You know what I mean? So you'll go off and do a hunting quest with Hosea, or you'll go off and rob a homestead with is it Seamus, the Irish guy. So obviously there's a gameplay reason for all these different kind of personalities, but it also adds a lot of vibrancy to the group and a lot of variety, and it's very nice to see. So, and that's just right from the off. That's without any kind of progression or investment from you as a player.
I think that's really interesting. I think Rockstar do this really, really well with their games, because if you think about GTA 5 as well, they did the opening to that game was very strong. But this one, like I said, because it's a Western, is slower in a sense, because in GTA 5 you first play the very first bank. Well, one of the bank rob jobs that goes wrong. While this time you only hear about it. Your team had done it without you, and it had gone wrong. And I think that's
set after the fact, isn't it? Yeah.
And also the other thing about it is, like, one, that's great for the pacing of the game to show that it's different between GTA 5. I think with that from a gameplay perspective. But two, it goes on to building on the character. What you said, he's more of the honourable amongst amongst thieves in a sense, and you feel like that because you don't know what happened. You also like it feels like your hands are kind of clean at this point, while others have either been injured or talked about stuff that has gone wrong. And I think that's a very interesting way in how they frame that because of this, you know.
Yeah, well, obviously it's got a morality system, hasn't it? So it allows you've got a fully formed character with a history, and you're with a group of people that you know have gone through certain events, but you're still able to project whatever kind of morality onto that character as you please, which is quite good. So, you know, if you want to go into it believing that he's a brutal killer, you could do that. If you want to go into it thinking he's going to be, you know, very honourable, sort of more, you know, John Wayne than Clint Eastwood, then you can do that. And that's what Rockstar have done very well. Like, the characters are very well fleshed out. The world is very well fleshed out. You know, everything down to the dialogue is very, very witty, but also very natural.
Yeah, I think that's it. Because the way that he interacts with characters is very, like, it's per character. You know, like I said, you've got that band travelling with you, but you can tell some he prefer to others, and this with different ways.
There's a history with every person, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, because I just want to talk about the tutorial, well, I don't want to say tutorial because it didn't necessarily feel like that, to be honest, too much, was the chapter 1, and this is going to contain mild spoilers for those who haven't played, but it's where you start off in the game where you are in this like snowed off area. I think that's a very interesting way because you kind of only get to know certain members of your group as well in this.
Yeah, you got a really small party, haven't you, when you're going out to... It's when you go out to get John, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's 2 of you when you go get John. But like, I think that's really nice is it sets it off in a very harsh environment in terms of like what's happened to your gang, what's also happening to you when you're trying to survive the crazy snowstorm. And it shows that there's a lot there, and also shows that you've got history with other gangs as well for finding it's not O'Doyle's or O'Donnell's or something.
Yeah, the O'Driscolls.
O'Driscolls, that's the one. And you've got, you know, there's a lot of this stuff to do there. I didn't feel like it was a strong tutorial. Like, when I say strong, I don't mean like it's
like a light tutorial.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's not like, you know, move camera with your left. You know, it kind of trusts that you kind of roughly know what's going on with most games. But we said something off air that was very interesting, I thought, is like, it's quite complex of a game in terms of controls because there's a lot there. And you said it best when you said, you know, there's kind of a subsystem or sub-controls within each kind of interaction type, you know?
I think that's probably why it feels more like a light tutorial than a fully fledged tutorial, because it would become too much of an information dump, I think, if they were to just say, right, this is how you do this and this and this and this, because you'd forget half of those actions before they became necessary. So for lack of a better word, tutorial is spread over probably the first hour and a half worth of gameplay is what I felt. But you were introduced to each kind of control or control system when it became necessary, rather than just, here you go, remember it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very good way of doing it, because I've got to say, I wouldn't have remembered if I was just introduced to all the controls right from the off.
Yeah.
But it did lead to the first, you know, hour and a half being very slow, being very hand-holdy, because obviously they couldn't just let you loose in a massive living world without kind of showing you the ropes. So there is a certain amount of investment that needs to be given from the player into the game before you can really kind of open up.
I agree, but I will say is like the missions were very entertaining from it. You know, when you first encounter the O'Driscolls, when they've taken over this farm,
like the homestead,
that was really well done. The hunting was really nice. I tend to find myself hunting a lot in that game now.
I do as well, actually. Every time I return at the camp, I make sure I pick up a deer or something.
Yeah, and I think it's really great that, you know, and the hunting system is really nice, you know, with how it feels and the range of animals that you have for it. And like, it's a beautiful game, you know.
Yeah,
it's
it really is,
stunning. You know, congratulations to all the team members who've worked on it, because they've done a phenomenal job with it. But I want to come back to the tutorial and the pacing of it, because I think, as you said, they do it in a sense because there's a lot to take in, but also the fact that it is an homage to these Western films. And I think sometimes people forget this because it's been a long time since there's been a proper Western film, and it's not been a massively popular genre when we were growing up, to be honest, as kids. It was more in the 60s, 70s kind of.
Yeah, I think Westerns as a sort of staple of cinema, there was a time when the Western was what our superhero movie is now. You know, there was a time when that was the big thing, and there was sort of 5-6 coming out a year. But it's the same with any kind of fad or big craze. It just gets done to death, and then it kind of lies low for a while. And there's been a couple of Westerns in recent years. You know, there was the two Tarantino-y Westerns with Django and Hateful Eight, but you know, they're not like a classic Western. No, they're a Tarantino Western. You know, it's heavily stylized, and there's a lot of him coming through that. They remade 310 to Yuma in 2007, but again, it was really small.
Open Range was good as well.
Which one?
Open Range.
I haven't seen it.
It was surprisingly good. I think that was like
that one?
2000. Man, I can't remember. But I think the point that I'm trying to get across to this
is... It's really a genre that...
Yeah, and...
small.
And most people don't realise, because I did see before I start playing this, people felt it was very kind of slow, but I put that in terms of more that's kind of how Westerns are in terms of the genre, you know, like they're trying to capture a certain feeling within it, and I think that's something you have to commend them for in a sense as well, because, you know, in this day and age of games where it's very fast paced, and if you look at, for example, such games for battle royales, for example, you die and instantly a new one, very much like that. You know, they've taken something and they're trying to stick to the fact that this pace is what we're going for because of the genre and the style it is, and I think it's an interesting one to do, and it's nice that they've tried to do this. You know, with it, and I think that's a really interesting one for it. I think there's the interesting one when we move past the tutorial is then because the world opens up a bit more in chapter 2, and I think they do a great job with different characters. Sorry, I'm getting allergic to my own bullshit. Is they do what's really interesting is they say there's like each character has not necessarily, but there's a kind of different mission type because that relates to who that character is as a person in a sense, and I think that's great that they've tried to stick to something to represent gameplay.
Give you a reason for each of these things.
Yeah, you know, and they have different interactions for this, you know, and I think that's nice for that one there. And it's also an interesting one to see John Marston as a younger man, you know, compared to, you know, he was the star of the first
Red Dead Redemption.
The very first one, well, the first Red Dead Redemption. I thought it was a really interesting one there, but no, I think they've got some nice stuff, and the world does open up a lot, you know, from that point. I think
once you reach your first sort of main camp, Horseshoe Overlook, you know, when I got to that bit of the game and I opened up the map, and I was quite blown away by how big it is. And what I like is you're not instantly just given like a fast travel system or something like that, so you have to explore the world. And because that is a big part of the game, obviously a big part of survival was just dealing with the environment and, you know, what natural predators you might come across. So it's a big part of the game is just taking off on your horse and riding. And actually, one of the best moments I had early in the game was I reached the train station that's nearest Horseshoe Overlook. I can't remember what it's called, but I played like a couple of hands of poker, and then I went back outside and I whistled for my horse, and my horse was trotting along to me, and then it got hit by a train. So then I was just left stranded in the middle of nowhere with no horse, and then obviously had to walk back to wherever I was going, and then it became almost like a resource management game, because obviously you need
stamina,
to eat often, you need to keep your health up, you need to be wearing the right clothes for the temperature of the day. So it's amazing how one little thing, because in another game, like, you could just call in another car or call in something else, but with this, that was your horse, and now your horse is dead. So you've got to go to the nearest town, find a stable, and buy a new horse. And if you don't have any money, you've got to steal a horse, and then obviously that changes your morality system, and it makes you wanted, and there's a bounty on your head. So It's how all these little kind of random acts of chance can have a major impact on not just the game, but your character and how the world perceives your character.
I think that's a great point, because the thing is with many of Rockstar games, GTA 5 also did a lot, many of the previous ones as well, is you come out with your own stories from it. Because I have a similar one where it's very early on in the second chapter, but someone recognizes you from the bank robbery and you have to chase them down. And like, I stole a horse to do so, and then I returned the horse, and it was one of those things where, because this guy is like, because you straight, I'm just borrowing it, and then you go return it later, and he's like, oh, you were just borrowing it, which is cool. And there's another one where I went out and it's like under this train tracks, this bridge, I see this leg just there, and I was like, oh shit, what's happened? And you see this guy who's hung up, and someone had written, something, I can't remember what they wrote, but it was a really interesting one, because I was like, oh, okay, there's stuff going on here that
I've not come across that myself, but yeah, I've heard about that. Sounds, it feels like the world's lived in, though, doesn't it? It makes it feel like you're part of something bigger.
For sure, and I thought it was a really nice one for that. And I think that's what I think Rockstar do amazingly, is because their systems are so intertwined with everything, like morality, then with how transport works, or the AI in these worlds. Like, every action is a reaction. You really do feel that. It may not always be in the story, but in the gameplay, like in your own story, the player's story, you're going to come across something that you might not have compared to other games. And I think they always master that within their games.
Yeah, that's definitely something they've done really well with this one. Like, the main story is really good, it is, and all the character work they do, and how every person in your camp has their own kind of thread. But yeah, I think I've had the most fun with the game when I've just been doing my thing, and then I have my Arthur Morgan, what I mean? And that's different to your Arthur Morgan. Even though we are just going through the same events in terms of the core story, it's how we react to the world and the world reacts to us. So
yeah, I was gonna say, from like your point of narrative and that, how do you feel they tackle the narrative? Like, how do you think, what are some of their techniques, I guess, that you use to help convey these characters in a good way? What is it you think they do?
I think the best thing with Red Dead, and it was a similar thing with GTA 5 that obviously Rockstar did, was they don't hit you over the head with the beats you need to hit for the story. The story's there, and the missions are there to activate when you're ready. So you've got that core story, that core experience, and that'll play out pretty much the same for anyone, I imagine. But what they do well is they say, right, that's there, you do that when you want, but whilst you're waiting, this is a town, and this town lives and breathes. So if you go in the morning, you'll see the butcher with all his fresh meat. But if you go at night, you'll see the saloon overspilling with drunkards, and you might get into a brawl. So it's telling a story that's circumstantial rather than just putting everyone through the same motions.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes a game special. If you go watch a Western, you just get a slice, don't you? You just see what you're shown. Whereas I could go down Valentine at 3:00 in the afternoon and get into a fight with somebody in a bar, and then all of a sudden have the police on me and have a shootout in the street. But you could just go down and sell your horse, So it's that environmental, circumstantial storytelling that I think Rockstar are really strong with.
Yeah.
And they were really good with it in GTA, but I think they've mastered it with Red Dead.
Yeah.
Too.
No, I agree. They've definitely stepped that up there for sure. And I think it's just it's a really cool game to see and how everything's going. And as I said, we're only very early in this, so there's some things we can comment on, but things might change later in the game that we're not aware of at this moment in time. But we are going to have to wrap it up now for here and just say that we are enjoying it. If you guys or girls do have any kind of thoughts on it that you want to share with us, then please do. You can contact me on Twitter at MaxPairs, or do email in your questions, leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. And where can they reach you, Dan?
I'm at Doward24 on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. and PlayStation Network.
So you can contact Dan there if you want to reach out to him.
I'll be on Red Dead Online soon, so
Yeah, you can match with him. Yeah, and if you do want to support the show to help, bring up any sort of things, quality, and just help support it and get some really cool benefits, then do check out the Patreon, where you can get some really cool stuff there. And thank you all very much. So we will catch you all next time. Bye.
bye-bye.